All right, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're at. Thanks for joining us today. Today, I'm going to go through a topic, and I'm going to go through these kind of no-code platforms that are out there. Some people some people like them, some people doubt them. Let's just say. I think they get a bad name sometimes because people that are developers are like, I got to code, but I think they're actually pretty powerful in a couple ways. So I'm going to go through that today. I'm going to hook one up to Cockroach DB, and we're going to build an app pretty quickly here. So I'm going to do a little bit of a demo. But before we start today, people like to ask, what is this session? This is a basic session. I have a couple topics I'm going to cover, but would love comments, questions from y'all. So please do dump, questions or, whatever you want into the QA or the chat. I'll try to do the best I can in demo to do whatever we want to do here. I might be learning a little bit as well. I've tried two of these platforms, so that'll be interesting. But yes, a recording of this will be available a little bit later today. I think we stream out to LinkedIn, to YouTube. So if you have questions, I know there's a way to ask questions through that, and I know JP, who's helping me here, can help get those questions over, and we'll ask them. We'll answer them live. So, but the recording should be available on our YouTube channel very soon after we are done here. So, hi everybody. My name is Jim. I am the principal product evangelist here at Cockroach Labs. I've been with the company for about 3.5 years, and I've seen our products kind of go through a very very crazy kind of evolution, if you will, from something that was, I believe, when I first saw Cockroach DB, I couldn't believe what I was looking at, but it was fairly complex to understand and fairly complex to actually operate. And in 3.5 years, we've gone a long way to making this something that is fairly simple and straightforward. And so I think that this presentation is kind of the epitome of simple and straightforward, because I'm going to talk to you about no-code platforms, what they do, how they use them, how they might be of value in certain organizations. I'll talk a little bit about Cockroach DB Serverless and how this fits into this context of what I'm going to actually show you right now. And then we're going to demo. We're going to get into Cockroach DB. We're going to get into one of the platforms called Retool, and another one the Google App Sheet. So we're gonna build an app on those things today. So that's what we're gonna cover today. So let's just start with this kind of no code. Now, it's funny. No code just means I don't have to code, I guess. But you're still kind of thinking in business logic. You're still thinking through kind of what your application wants to do. I think it's kind of a weird little name. It's kind of like how serverless is kind of a weird name for a serverless database or serverless platforms. This is really kind of drag and drop, coding, drag and drop app development. And I think all of these platforms are kind of interesting. They all at the heart really do the same thing. They allow you to connect to a data source. They allow you to kind of build this drag and drop kind of application on the fly. And they allow you to deploy that. And in this building of these applications, they may have a repository of tools that you can put on a window, and then actions and things that you can take on these sort of things. So you're kind of stringing together some functions based on some data. And so if you have some knowledge of what you want to actually accomplish, they're pretty valuable. Now, each of the vendors also, one other note there, they also have these kind of template galleries of things that you can actually build these things out. Like I know they had like the big one they were all building was like a COVID tracing platform. And what would that look like for your organization? I think a lot of this stuff, like I've used like Google Forms to do a lot of this stuff before in my life. And Google Forms have been great. Like I can, I have a spreadsheet behind that. I can actually do some cool things with it, but it's fairly simple. I'm just gathering information. Anytime you want any sort of action to be taken on something that's been inputted or something like that, that's where you start looking at these. And I think I wouldn't build some like big, huge application on something but something for internal use that I just want to actually, maybe gather some feedback from some customers and have it interactive. Like if there's maybe some internal kind of like, we on a marketing team here at Cockroach Labs, we have a whole kind of system for how we track projects and, what projects can we look at each week? And, what are the ramifications of something moving on, and something being delayed? We use project management tools to do that. Is that nothing but just a repo? And so can we actually set up rules for when things start to change? Anywhere you want to start setting up rules around things, you want to give it an interface, you want to publish it. That's where I think these things are pretty valuable. I think a lot of our little internal applications, these things can be done. And honestly, I can have an app up and running, and I'm going to show you this. I did this because we had an internal contest of how quickly you can get the app up and running on Cockroach DB. It was about 82 seconds. I had something up and running from no database and no application to something online, and I was able to present it on my phone. Was about 82 seconds, which is pretty damn fast. So there's a famous video in our team where Charlie Custer is one of our content guys, actually builds a cluster, and he in the time it takes to boil some ramen or something. I gotta beat. Okay, so serverless, and just to give you context of what I'm going to connect to, Cockroach DB is a distributed database that was built for the cloud. Now, for us, we have built scale into the product, so it's real easy to scale a thing, both like for volume of data, but volume of transactions and kind of geographic scale if you want to do that, right? And by doing so, we've put kind of all this automation. You never have to think about sharding again, right? It's fairly simple and straightforward. And so, for us, that's kind of a core tenet of what we built, but we also built this database that, well, as a cockroach, it's resilient, right? And you can't kill it. And if you think about those two things, and if you extend that to basically maybe auto scaling the thing up and down and being able to do these sort of things, well, you can get to this model where the database becomes serverless, where, we have changed the way that you think about Cockroach so that, it's consumption-based pricing. And so you only pay for what you want to use. And so, a few months back, we thought about this, and for us, we just really want to focus on letting developers do what they want to do without worrying about the database. Like, I just want to build, I want transactions to be guaranteed and correct. I want to code against an API. I just want it to look like SQL, basically. I want to look like Postgres, but I don't want to deal with any of the back end. I don't want to deal with propping it up. I don't want to deal with upgrades. I don't want to deal with scaling this. I don't want to deal with active pass, like all this craziness. Let's just take that out of the hands of the developer. And so at Cockroach, what we did is we have Cockroach DB Serverless. I'm going to show you how a cluster gets created. It's all consumption-based. It's free up to a certain level if you want to actually use Cockroach DB Serverless. We charge people for storage and request units. But it's free up to 5 gigabits of storage. And so that's how much data you're actually storing in Cockroach. And then 250 million request units, which is basically kind of like, it's an equivalent of like a transaction. But we have to measure certain transactions differently because some transactions are more complex than others. And so, it's our kind of abstraction for doing that. And we call that a request unit. Now, it's plenty for a month. It's definitely something that you can get something going on and have a fairly decent size application going. But it's really, pay as you go. There's spend limits, and I'll show you all this. But it's all consumption based, but it's free up to a certain level, right? And so with that, oh man, I'm on some wrong slides here. So sorry, I just did some other stuff here. So let's go here, and I'm gonna let's go into a demo of let's just go show this thing. So what is the economic model of Cockroach DB? What can be done with the free version? When do the customers have to pay using Cockroach DB on-prem? Okay, so there was a question that came through. What's the economic model for here at Cockroach Labs? At Cockroach Labs, we're building a fairly powerful database that we feel is pretty valuable to a lot of people. And, our hundreds of customers are gaining huge amounts of value in what we're doing. And this is traditional software, traditional database where we go out and, sell these things to people, and we give them support and services and a great product. People will use one of 3 different versions or kind of ways to consume Cockroach. One of them is self-hosted, where they take the software and run it themselves on their own servers. They could use Cockroach DB Dedicated, which is just us as a service, which you can choose basically, any of the cloud providers, and we'll manage all that environment for you. It's on dedicated VMs for you, so it's dedicated infrastructure. And then there is this new product called Serverless, which I'm about to show you, which basically is in beta. It's currently single region, and I'll show you through the whole process of how you would actually pay for that. It's all based on consumption. So one is consumption-based serverless. Dedicated is per node is what you're actually going for. And if you want to actually learn more information about pricing, go into Cockroach DB and start up an instance, and you can actually check that out. So I'm going to go and I'm going to go create an instance of Cockroach DB Serverless. So I'm going to share my screen again. So here we are. Okay, y'all. So a little live coding here today. So as interactive as you all want to be, please do. So let's go to cockroachlabs.com, and I'm going to click this little sign in button, and that's going to whip me over to cockroachlabs.cloud. So you can just go to cockroachlabs.cloud. I am going to sign in as myself. I already have an account. If you don't have an account, it's pretty straightforward. We just ask for a couple of different bits of information. If you don't want to provide anything, you actually just want to log in with GitHub, you can do that as well. So that's all here. So when you come into Cockroach DB Cloud, you have no clusters. So what I'm going to do, the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a cluster. And so this is where we're talking about, the various different versions of this, dedicated single tenant clusters, or these kind of highly available, shared infrastructure, serverless clusters. And so you can kind of go through here and choose your own thing and go through the whole process to see what you want to do. But I'm going to go through creation of a serverless cluster here in Cockroach DB. So we're going to click on that, and you can choose your cloud provider. I'm going to run in Google Cloud. I'm actually going to do an app in Google Cloud. So it's kind of a quick, easy thing here. You choose which region you want to be in. As I noted before, Cockroach DB Serverless right now is only single region. We're working really hard on making it multi-region. So you can imagine a serverless database all over the whole planet with endpoints all over the place would be great. So I'm going to go Iowa, and then you define a spend limit. And so a spend limit is basically, don't charge me any more than this a month, which I like a whole lot in terms of consumption. It basically, you'll never pay more than what your spend limit is. So I can put in $5 and that's it's going to be. Now, what we do is we meter out the amount of request units you need for the entire month. And so there's some great things around pricing that you can actually look at, and how we actually meet out these different workloads over the month and how we actually do this. So if you go look at the pricing page, which I actually just clicked through from here, it goes into a little bit more detail how we actually ensure you still have bandwidth, but you still never overspend in the context of a month, right? And so there's a couple of different scenarios there. If you want to go check that out, I think it's a pretty cool name. So I am going to name this cluster. I'm going to call it Walker 001. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create my free clusters. So, okay, Cockroach is in the background, and 5 or 10 seconds going to do that. And so I have now created a cluster. And it is available. And here's my information. If I wanted to actually connect to it, I'm going to be using these connection parameters, and we'll go through this a little bit when we actually get into the tools, but I'm done. I have a database. So I had a database in just a few seconds, and it's pretty fast. Yeah. Okay. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to use 2 different no-code platforms. The first one was Retool, and I got introduced to Retool I don't know, about 4 or 5 months ago. I built a couple apps on it. I like it a whole lot. I think it's pretty cool. It's pretty powerful. I think their templates are great. I think the pricing is reasonable for your value. There's a couple of things in the pricing and where you have to pay that I'll actually point out in the context of the demo that I thought were a little bit odd. AppSheet, Google AppSheet is the other one I'm going to use. Also, like unbelievably easy to build on and actually really, really powerful. I've actually built something with bubble.io as well. I'm not going to do that today, just from a time point of view. Bubble's pretty damn good too. And then I tried Honeycode, AWS Honeycode, which is the AWS version, but I couldn't connect it to a database. So that was not for me. So I'm going to sign into my Retool account. Like I said, they have free accounts as well. I think it's 30 days. Sort of anything. So basically what you have in Retool, you have apps, you have resources, a query library, and then a whole education site. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create a new resource, and I'm going to create a new connection to a cloud database. Now, the beautiful part about Cockroach DB is very early on, we made the decision to be wire compatible with Postgres. So while you don't see like an explicit, connector here for Cockroach database, it's fine because we basically just overload and use the Postgres connectors. I'm going to use this everywhere. So I'm going to call this Walker DB. I'm I don't know, 001 again. I'm just going to Walker DB in Retool. I'll call it that, right? And so for the host, I'm going to come back here. I'm just going to copy my host information. I'm going to copy that in here. I'm going to come back here. I have my port. I'm going to put the port in here. What's my database name? My database name is there. I copy that. I'm going to dump that in here. This is, I believe, James. And then my password is here. I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to dump that in here. And I'm going to connect using SSL. Everything looks good. And cross my fingers. Resource created. Great. Cool. I'm going to go create an app. So Walker app. I'm just going to call it that. I'm going to go create an app. Okay, great. So So I've actually connected to this thing. And so one of the first things I'm going to do is actually, I'm just going to drag and drop an item over here. Oh, wait, you know what? I'm not even going to do that yet because I don't even have anything. I'm going to do this. I'm going to go back and I'm going to look at my query library. And so basically I have this resource now, which is this Walker database, but actually I need to create a table in there. So I'm actually going to use this tool here that Retool has to actually create a table. So I'm going to create a table. I'm going to call it people. And let's see, I'll give it, let's go person ID. Person ID will be an integer. Oops, man, you're seeing like the worst of my typing ever right now. And we're going to make that a primary key, right? I'm going to give it, first name, and that's going to be varchar 20, right? I'm going to give it last name, varchar, we'll go 20. And then, man, I'm just really bad at typing today. So last name, and then we'll give it, we'll also add city in here. So let's go. Right. So let's see, my syntax all good. Yeah, so good. So what you do is you just run this query. And so what did I do wrong? Table people. What do I got wrong here, everybody? Was that wrong? What did I do wrong? Oops, I have an extra comma. Okay, so I'll just run that. So what it's going to do, oh man, what did I do wrong? Oh, I think I know what I got. Did I not end it? This is what happens when you do things live. I guess this is my own syntax. This is you seeing a marketer code. So I'm gonna actually I'm actually gonna paste in basically something that I had done before, y'all. What did I do wrong? City varchar line 5. Varchar 20. It looks right. What did I do wrong? Somebody's actually, thanks, Devis. How did I do this? I'm sorry, but let's do this. I'm gonna actually, there was a typo. This looks good. So I'm gonna run this, y'all. I had it wrong. Okay, so okay, great. So sorry, this is what happens when you do things right. My pasted text was right, you guys. I'm sorry, I fat fingered something. So I created a table, great. Let's just insert a few records, insert, come on, Jim. Insert into table, into people. I'm just gonna, actually, I'm gonna copy paste this stuff, y'all, because it's a little bit easier. And we will just do a quick little. Let's see here. You know what happened, y'all? I gotta type all these things out. So sorry. All right, it looks right. Do I think I got everything in here? All right, so I got a couple of records in there. So if I go over here, I go to my app, I can now create a new app. Yeah, I don't need to say that query. We'll come back to it. So let's go look at my app now. Yeah, I had double quotes. I saw that, Nicholas, and it's stupid. That's okay. So let's go edit our app. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna drag a table over here. And what you see is it will start to do, that is not what I wanted. So the data should come from a query. Are from people. Okay, great. I'm going to delete this. I'm going to delete this table. Yes. I'm going to add a new one, and it should actually just bring in, yeah, so look at what it did. It has basically Jim Ashley, and I can go preview this application. You'll see here's Jim Ashley, and here's a bunch of stuff. Great. So what I did is I basically just created a table, and it is connected to the database. I'm pulling data from that thing. I've used basically the kind of the raw editing tool within Retool to actually do some of these things. But I've basically created a cool thing. So, but let's do this now. Let's go over to Google App Sheet, which actually is even better, y'all. And so I'm going to go in and create Google App Sheet. I'm not going to do this yet because actually we want to connect to our database first. So what you do in Google App Sheet, so Google App Sheet has a whole world of stuff to do here as well. And so let's go look at sources. So when you come into Google App Sheet, you log in, you go into your account. Actually, this is old, so let me actually delete that. So I'm going to add a new data source. And this data source is going to come from a cloud database. So I'm going to go connect to my Cockroach Db Serverless cloud again. And again, we're just going to use Postgres. We're going to use Postgres connectors because Cockroach DB kind of talks like that. And so the server is here, and there's one trick with the server here. I got to actually add the port number here at the end. So what do we do? 26.25.7. So let's go 26.25.7. So they don't have an extra line for port. So that's the one trick here that you have to actually talk about. That's my database. So I will add that. I know I am James, and then the password is there, and I'll pull this back in, boom, and I am going to require SSL. We will test this work, baby. Okay, great. I am connected. That was really quick. So now I'm connected to this thing. I have an authorized access. Cool. So I now have this new database, and I'm going to create a new app. I'm going to start with my own data. This is, Walker, Google 001, I'll call it. Let's see what it is. This is personal and fun. And I'm going to choose my data. And I'm going to choose database one. I'm going to choose schemas. We'll look at public schemas. We'll look at tables. And I'm going to look at the people database. And setting up the app. Voila, I have an application that's actually being built here. And what you see over on the right-hand side is a simulation of the app itself. So I basically just added, I can now add a record to this. I could add 3. I could say, Jeremy DuPont, who's in Denver with me, my friend Jeremy, and I'll say Denver. And I can save this record, and I've just done record entry into a database. I created a database. I created a small app in one tool. I created another one in another tool. We're all connected to the same database. And so basically what I've done is done a whole bunch of things. Now there's a bunch of things you can do. I really like actually Google App Sheet. You can actually change the look of this thing. You can change the UI. You can change the look, put it in dark mode. One of the things that you can actually do from here is you have to do is you go into manage. You actually have to deploy this thing. So it'll run a deployment check, which basically makes sure all your logic and everything else is going to go on. So there's no definition errors. I don't have a description on this. I don't have a custom launch icon. Okay, so these are kind of like just UI type things, but I basically can move this thing to deployed. And unfortunately, right now in my free account, I run out of time. But I actually was able to just show this on my phone, and so I had actually built it something, and I had records being inputted on my phone immediately, right? So, but I don't have the full account access on this thing right now. But there's lots of stuff that you can do here. I'll just show kind of quick how you might add behavior here. So behaviors here are kind of delete. You can edit this record. Like let's add a behavior. We're going to add a new behavior. There's a bunch of different, we'll just say, leave, I'll call it, for this thing. So there's lots of things you can do. Copy the data, go to another app sheet, export it to CSV. So you can basically say like, select a bunch of apps and then, or select a bunch of records, click this button, it's going to output all of that to a CSV, this sort of thing, right? And so there's a bunch of little things you can do. Let's just do let's go to an external website. I'm just going to say www.cockroachlabs.com. Y'all, I am the worst typist in the world. So we'll just say save. Great. It's going to launch an external. The appearance of that thing is going to be this little. Yeah, that's great. That's perfect. Cool. And I'm going to save this. And so now when I come into my app, and I look at one of these records, I have this little button called leave. Let's go back to people, our full vote. I have this little button that I've added here, and it's going to bring up a little website, right? So it's really as simple as that. And there's lots of different actions that you can actually go from here. And so, to build like really simple, straightforward applications, pretty straightforward and pretty easy, right? So let's do one last thing. I'm gonna add a bunch of records here. Actually, I'm gonna cut and paste this. I'm gonna go back into retool and do this, y'all. So I'm gonna go back to my query library. I'm gonna go against my database here. I'm gonna go there, and this is actually, there was a typo here. People, cool. Let's go run this. This should work as well. Great. And so if I come back over here and I do a refresh, you'll see a bunch more records have been added here. So what I'm showing is, and so now let's go back into Cockroach DB and Cockroach DB Serverless, and you'll see, oh, look at it here. Look at my storage is up and using now. So look at it. I've actually increased my storage over time. Here's, I guess, at about, I added a couple records here, but I just added a bunch of records. So it's showing storage used over time. Here's my, request units per second. So let's just start running this thing. Let's see what happens when I just reload this thing a bunch of times. It should basically have a, this thing will refresh. So you'll see sequence statements, selects, updates. So there's some basic queries that you're going on here across the cluster that'll actually start to show you some things. So this will actually catch up, and we'll see a couple more queries going on the database there today. So, so what I showed you was creating a database, a serverless database in Cockroach. It takes just literally a couple seconds. I went into Retool. I used Postgres connectors. I connected to that thing. I was able to run queries. Oh, by the way, one thing in Retool, the free account, you can connect to a database. You can run these queries using this kind of query builder guide, this query library. But when you build an application and you want to actually run and actually have the thing kind of, demonstrate this and actually put it on a table, this sort of stuff, you actually have to pay the $10 for it to actually interact with the thing if you want to use it beyond preview. Right. So that's kind of one of those weird little things, but that's okay. And then I went over in Google and showed you how easy it was to create an application in Google as well. And that was pretty simple, pretty straightforward. So so let's go back here and see. Yeah. So, so I had a bunch of queries go on. So there's a bunch of selects going on, right? So that is my demo. I believe you can, Nicholas is saying, can you import from CSV? I believe you can into these tools. I think if you just play around in here, you can actually do that. I'm not sure where I saw that. I saw that somewhere in Nicholas in app sheet. But you can actually, what you could do is create a whole other app and then connect the two apps and have them kind of go back and forth around, back and forth to each other. So, so I, look at no code platforms. I think they get a little bit of a bad rap, from professional developers. I used to code a whole lot. I do like coding. Obviously, I'm horrible because my fat fingers and I can't debug half the time. I probably drive myself crazy with stupid errors and stuff, but these things are pretty valuable. I think it's kind of one of these things that if you find the right reason to use that tool, then use it. Use Cockroach DB Serverless underneath these things, and you can start building applications literally in seconds. So if you can dream of something, you can start playing around with these things. It's pretty easy to build out. I think Retool is pretty awesome as well. There's a whole bunch of stuff that you can actually do with that tool. So with that, that's all I had today. There weren't many questions. It was more of a kind of quick demo to show you all how to do this. But I want to thank everybody for joining. I just wanted to be a half hour today. And so if y'all want to learn more, go to cockroachlabs.com, learn more, join our Slack channel. We're engaged all the time there. And again, the recording of this will be available after the event. So thanks, everybody, and have a great day.